Recording in progress.
Call the meeting to order. Can I have the pledge of allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Any roll call, please, Lisa?
Director Roberts.
Here.
Director Holton.
Here.
Director Ball.
Here.
Director Johnson.
Present.
Director Van Reed.
Yes.
Thanks.
Then we got item number 3, public forum. Any person may address the board of directors on any matter within the speak at jurisdiction, which is not on the agenda. And Jane had one later on, so we're good there. Then we got the consent agenda number 4. On 4A, any questions, anyone? Okay, any questions on 4B? I want to go through the consent agenda.
All seconds.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? The roll call.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Holton.
Yes.
Director Ball.
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Van Reed.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Then we got item number 5, unfinished business, none. Then we go into a closed session.
You may want to wait a minute since
Jeff's not here.
negotiator's not here yet.
So you want to just keep going?
Yeah, we can jump into the GSA meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Through the chair, just so I took like the last parking spot. I don't know if he's having trouble finding.
Let me finish my message there.
There's always under the trees.
There's plenty of room on the streets. So we'll,
Oh, it's City Hall.
Yeah, I think that's
all right, we're starting the GSA meeting. I'd like to call the GSA meeting to order. Public forum, any person may address the board of directors on any matter within its jurisdiction, which is not in the agenda. This is for the GSA. None. Then we got item number 3, the consent agenda. Are there any questions on item 3A? If there's no questions, can we have a motion to do good group? Then motion and second, any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Wait, is Shirley the second?
Yeah.
Okay. Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Holton.
Yes.
Director Balch.
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Van Reed.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item number 4, unfinished business, none. Item number 5, new business. 5A, consider engagement of Groundwater Solutions, Inc. for the GSA annual report preparation in the amount not to exceed $34,828 for active bond.
Yeah, so we saw this proposal last board meeting, and I explained that each year in April, we're required to submit an annual report for the progress of the GSA towards implementing the GSP. And last year it was our first year. We had very little time between the actual approval and adoption of the GSP and the actual report. We approved the GSP in February and then just turned around pretty quickly and generate an annual report. And GSI proposed doing it for around 50,000, and they did use the whole 50,000 last year. But during that process, we indicated with GSI that we wanted to start bringing more of that work back in to staff. And so we negotiated a lower amount to assist us with the goal of next year being 100% of our staff doing the work. And making that a proposal for the 4,828. The big things that still remain and fuzzy for the staff are some of the geologic analysis that's going to be required to take the data and develop the mapping and the various, graphics and that sort of thing that show that we are progressing towards recovery in the basin. And requires some, use of softwares that we're not used to that are, familiar to hydrogeologists, so we're looking at those. And then we'll still likely need some confirmation next year in terms of the conclusions that we come to. But we have pretty high confidence to do most of it in-house. We'll do all of it in-house, just not get confirmation. So staff's recommending that we engage CSI Water Solutions, in an amount not to exceed $4,825 to assist CSA staff in carrying 125 report. So
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Then roll call, please.
Director Robert?
Aye.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Aye.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Van Woert?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Then we got item number 6, Executive Director's Report for information done. Then we're hereby adjourning the meeting of the Carpinteria Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And we're still waiting for council. I'm sorry.
let me go grab the. You can shut it down.
Yes, so we're gonna go into the closed session. And that conference with labor negotiator pursuant to government code section 54957.6. District negotiator Jeffrey Dinkin, employee organization SEIU local 620. So we're back in open session. Jeff, do you want to make?
Yeah, if I can suggest a motion, the motion would be to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Carpinteria Valley Water District and Service Employees International Union Local 620 for the period November 14, 2024 through February 28, 2029.
Just point of order, item 7 is that. So making the motion under item 7.
Right,
So moved. Second.
we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? The roll call, please.
Director Robert?
Aye.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Hall? Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Van Woert?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hey, congratulations on having a 5-year deal.
So we're on item number 9, new business. 9A, the report of participation in the AWWA Transformative Water Leadership Academy. For information, and Mesa is going to have a presentation.
I just want to sync the timing for the start of this since the slides are going to progress automatically. So if you have any questions, hold them to the end because this thing will just keep going. So I'll explain what this is through the presentation, and then if there's additional questions afterwards, we can address them then. Okay, ready to start, Bob?
I hope so. It seems like.
Oh, sorry, will you go back and let me know when you're, so I can time it? Okay. So over the last 10 months, I participated in the Transformative Water Leadership Academy hosted by American Water Works Association and Water Now Alliance. I'm going to refer to it as TWLA going forward. So I want to tell you a little bit about the program, why it was a valuable experience, and give you some background to start on what it is. So the goal of the program is to expand diversity in the workforce and leadership, install a community-first mindset, and support a healthy environment. So participants were from all over the US and Canada, including tribal representatives from all parts of the water field with diverse backgrounds, ages, races, and from very small and large utilities. The program was only possible because of these people who put in a bunch of their own time in addition to their official roles They actually recently received a large EPA grant to be able to continue this program for several more years. Some of them are actually the ones who first conceptualized this and brought the whole program to fruition as well. So big thank you to those people. So throughout the 10 months, we had virtual lectures on more technical topics, things like public health and safety, with some case studies on, failing systems in economically depressed areas. Also nature-based solutions to safeguard the environment through things like stormwater infiltration. But what was really impactful were these in-person sessions, the first one in Atlanta that focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We visited the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. We heard from industry leaders around Atlanta who manage historically redlined areas. And we heard personal stories from people who faced oppression and other similar challenges. And we did exercises to challenge our own biases. The second session in Denver, the second in-person session, was focused more on team building. So we got to do a lot of fun exercises. We worked in small groups and put on a skit with a prop and music and a presentation. These sessions on the soft skills were really more valuable even than the technical presentations. While we were in Denver, we also saw these really impactful green infrastructure sites where there had been initially some opposition from the community to undergoing these were very, very large, expensive projects across several sites. And now you can see that they're really an asset to the community. So that was impressive. The most valuable part really of the program was getting to form friendships. So seeing the same people for 10 months and through 2 in-person sessions. Most of my personal professional network is California and Western US based, but I now have friends who are in New York, New Orleans, Canada, across the country at very different utilities. So I want to highlight a couple of capstone projects that were done. So obviously I did the strategic plan for our district. A lot of other people's themes centered around workforce development, staff retention, bonding, and communication with the community. So one that I want to highlight is Mike, who works in Yosemite, developed a staff recruitment and retention program focused on their operations staff. They tend to get very competitive offers from other agencies and have problems with retention. So what he did there was create a system where they align training programs with certifications. So if you show that you're doing the education and experience that comes with your role, and then you get a certification, it's more or less an automatic promotion that you get there. And this is not something that had been done before. So he actually was able to get the Department of the Interior to approve that approach. And it's still a very early program there. But it seems really promising for them in terms of recruitment and retention. Joyce, who works in Hawaii, created a employee relations program where she was really focused on understanding and embracing the differences among staff. So she facilitated meetings where staff could meet informally and get to know each other a bit and develop good working relationships. Of course, she found that, just getting people to the table and to devote time to a program like that was difficult, but she is having some success. Darren in Colorado, his goal was to translate key materials into Spanish. And at first he wanted the materials on their website translated, but found that with the accessibility compliance rules that we have now, there just wasn't the bandwidth to do that. So instead he focused on printed materials that could be brought to events that they're already doing. So this was really important they have, I think, 10% of their population is Spanish speakers. So this was going to reach out to them with these key materials. Andrew, who lives in Nashville, so a really big metropolitan area, had a similar project where he was reaching out to people with limited English proficiency, they call it. And because he was in a big metropolitan area, he was able to mostly utilize the existing services, but he did do things like make sure staff had translation apps on their phones to then complement and enhance those existing programs. Mariah, who is in Arkansas, they have to do some big rate increases for some new infrastructure. I think there's actually laws around new infrastructure that they have to build. And so she really focused on doing outreach to the community and creating a really comprehensive communications plan. Thought that might not be advancing on that one. You might need to click on the next slide. But so she ensured that there were multiple mechanisms. So she created videos that she posted online. She created a survey to just hear people's feedback. She really engaged with the community in multiple ways to show them that, you know, the utility really wanted to understand what their concerns were and then tell them as well why the rate increases would benefit them. So the last program that I want to mention is Brad created a mentorship program at his utility where he pairs emerging professionals with people who have been around for a little bit longer and creates a learning environment where there's networking and opportunities for growth. Of course, it was difficult, he said, to actually find those pairs, mentors and mentees, but he says it's been very positive for everyone so far. Also just want to thank Bob and Norma for letting me participate in this program because it was a significant time investment. So I don't know if there are any questions, but I just wanted to share that that's something that I'm working on and can learn from. So, yeah.
I think it's great. I think, you know, you're talking about friendships, but it's also contacts. And there was, I'm sure, a lot of cross-pollination going on, and we have some of the same challenges that somebody else does, whether it's rate increases or something else. So I just think it's great exposure, and I think that this is gonna help you and us going down the road. So, good job.
Any other questions?
Well, thanks for the presentation.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Then we move on to item number 9, B. And then get to that. Surely. The resolution number 1161, resolution of the Board of Directors of the Carpinteria Valley Water District, commending Shirley Johnson for her service on the Carpinteria Valley Water District Board of Directors. Whereas Director Shirley Johnson has served on the board of the Carpinteria Valley Water District for 8 years, his unwavering dedication, commitment, and professionalism. And whereas while serving on the Carpinteria Valley Water District Board, Director Shirley Johnson also served on the Board of Directors of the Central Coast Water Authority, contributing to its challenging mission of consistently delivering and maximizing the benefit of state water projects in Santa Barbara County. And whereas Director Shirley Johnson served on the Board of Directors of the Carpinteria Groundwater Sustainability Agency, providing thoughtful ideas, discussion during the agency startup and development to the creation of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, the GSP, and now in its GSP implementation phase. And whereas during her tenure, Director Johnson has consistently demonstrated leadership, integrity, and a deep commitment to the issues facing the district, actively contributed to the board's mission of ensuring sustainable, reliable, and high-quality water services. And whereas Director Johnson's work has been instrumental in guiding the Carpinteria Valley Water District through numerous initiatives and improvements supporting policies, projects that have positively impacted both the residents and agricultural community in the Carpinteria Valley. And whereas her knowledge, experience, insight has been invaluable assets to the board, setting a high standard of service and fostering a spirit of collaboration and progress. And whereas her college staff, community members have recognized her dedication, resilience, positive contribution to the Carpinteria Valley Water District. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Carpinteria Valley Water District hereby extends its deepest gratitude and appreciation to Director Shirley Johnson for her 8 years of exemplary service and commitment to the district and to the community of Carpinteria. You want to add something to that?
Yeah, that was very nice. I wanted to say that as a resident, as a Carpinteria resident, and more importantly, a friend of Shirley Johnson's, I'd like to thank her and you for allowing us to take hot showers. Most people have no idea how much effort and strategy and science goes into the distribution of water in our communities. I used to write the articles for the Coastal View for the water district. I wrote it, but I'm not gonna say I understood it. I hope it was all right. But so I got to know all of you that, or the operation that way. And helped people run for this office. Shirley has taught me about the complications of water distribution, and not that I always understood, but she is diligent and honest in her decisions in life and here. In this day and age, God knows, we need vision and selflessness, and that is Shirley. She's scary honest. So I'd like to thank you, Shirley, A, for being my buddy, but B, for doing this job, which I find so difficult. I myself am on the planning commission, piece of cake, but then, of course, I studied that all my life. But I understand the complications of people who come in and have their point of view. But here's something I want to ask you all as a challenge, and that is, I've been on the planning commission about 18 years. Jesus, that's a long time. And one of the big questions that comes up is, how can you possibly build anything? We don't have the water. We don't have the water. And we just skate right over that and say, well, that's your jurisdiction. But it is a good thing that people understand what we have and don't have and how it kind of works. Even though you put those articles in about things, I think it needs to be dumbed down for those of us who aren't experts. But anyway, thank you for letting me babble on a bit and for all the stuff you do. Except for
Thank
Bill.
you so much.
Stop. Love
You took
you.
good time out to come over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing. I'd like to remind some of us that have been here longer that Shirley wasn't just here for 8 years. She attended meetings and was a partner to us for many years before you were on the board.
Before we even ran.
Before you active participant for a long time.
I probably will still be.
There you go.
Yeah, don't be a stranger.
And I just really have the dream, and it doesn't matter if I'm on the board or not, or a citizen of Carpinteria Valley, and I always express to Bob and staff, and wow, you guys are making it's like a sacred church to me, water issues, you know, it's a lifeblood. It goes back to the Native Americans and all different societies. And, you know, I really want, you know, the Carpinteria Water District to go on and be the best water district in California. Why not? You know, especially people who work here, you're spending your life and your hours working here, and the people on the board the same way. So many things happening, coming up, changing, and it's, you know, it's a dream. And I hope, you know, after Bob retires in a couple of years, that you go on and use your knowledge and your skill to help save California. You know, and it's been fascinating. I'm surprised because I started and was just a C and take these notes, you know, taking notes and stuff and trying to teach, you know, myself somewhat to keep up. That I just was so fascinated in it. But now I come to a point where kind of have to move into a different direction, and maybe I'll be circling back, but I'll be, you know, bugging you probably. Anyway, and thank you all for continuing and doing, you know, what you're doing. And thank you, Lisa, for being our secretary.
Surely, I hope you'll still come to the meetings, even though we do need a viewer on cable TV.
A viewer.
But I prefer to see in person.
Yeah, I'll just say, you know, in the 8 years, I've seen you grow in your understanding of water, and, you know, thinking back to the early days in CCW, and you're kind of like drinking from a fire hose, to now, I think you've grasped just how complex water is, and in particular, you know, CCWA and state water, and have enjoyed taking that journey with you. And, you know, I've matured as those 8 years have passed too, and really appreciate your dedication and, you know, all the things that you contribute to the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's been like I say, my first year, I didn't even know who I was coming or going, so, no, it's been a great journey. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll move for pass resolution 1162.
Polytech.
Oh, no, we're on the 1161, sorry.
1161, Polytech.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call please.
Director Roberts,
Aye.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Balch.
Aye.
And Director Johnson.
I'm not even gonna do a stupid joke. It's like.
Director Van Wingerden.
Yes, we do love.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Okay, then we got resolution number 9C, consider adopting resolution number 1162. Appointing Patrick O'Connor to the Carpinteria Valley Water District Board of Directors in election district 5 for election. Bob.
Yeah, so, we're sad to see Director Johnson go, but we have to have someone, manning that seat and, we went through the process, as you know, and, we're fortunate to get good applicants and, one of which is, Patrick O'Connor, and so this resolution is, to appoint him to the seat.
Motion, please.
I'll make a motion.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Then sorry, you can.
I had a comment, so do you want me to say it before I?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I missed it. You wanted to speak.
Okay, well, these are the people I travel with, so I know, Patrick O'Connor from all his contributions to the city, architectural review board and for his comments at the planning commission, all of which, most of which are very good. Sometimes he drives me crazy, so that's a good thing because he makes you think. And, he's grown on me. I think you're really, lucky to have him and, okay. That's all, Patrick. That's all you get out of me. But he's really a good choice. He's thoughtful, he expresses things well, and he's decent. And that to me is the highest quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I like to add that, we had a very good interview process. It was thorough, but Patrick was very well prepared and very thorough, so. We're looking forward that hopefully you can fill Shirley's shoes, so. If she's the film.
Thanks for
Good
saying
thing.
that.
Do we have a motion ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, a motion second. Roll call please.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Balch.
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
Motion passes 5.
Then we got item number 9D, consider draft ordinance 24 Act adopting administrative remedies and procedures for challenges to fees, charges, acceptance for information bar.
Yeah, so this is something that came up, Assembly Bill 2257 was just signed into law. And it provides tools and property team challenge, events, property team challenges. Waters or the assessments, and so if you recall, each time we, approve a new rate or, fee, we have to go through the 218 process of notification, and then we take a protest vote, and if more than 50% protest, then we're not allowed to lose that fee. There is, the process has been evolving, it's sort of been evolving through common law and court cases and precedent and that sort of thing, and as a result, it sort of has taken this legal path that is uncontrolled, and so AB 2257 is trying to set some boundaries on how it's challenged, how those rates can challenge, how it's implemented by attorneys. And one of the things that is in AB 2257 is a requirement that if someone is gonna try to seek judicial relief on a fee, they have to have had exhausted the administrative avenues in the process, and that administrative avenue is defined as submitting protests during the deliberation phase of the fee. And in that protest, you have to articulate what it is that you believe is unfair about the fee. you know, whether it's disproportional to the user benefit or whether it's unneeded. So there are a set of there's a set of requirements under 218 of what a fee has to be. Proportional is a big one. You can't collect more money than you need. So there are a list of things, and so a protester has to identify what it is about the fee that they think is wrong before they can then go and challenge it in court. And so this kind of puts a little bit of a guardrail and onus on those who are, you know, trying to seek judicial relief on fees. But as part of it, you have to adopt an ordinance, and so that's what this ordinance is. It's basically laying out that process and what the you know, protest has to say, basically, in order to take judicial avenues for relief. So this is just for information. We have to go through, for ordinances, we have to go through a process of notification and publication. We're gonna do that between now and the next board meeting. This will be back for consideration in December.
Any questions for Bob? Go ahead, Shirley.
Yeah, I don't know if I, whether you got this from the state or whatever, but my question is, it's on page, 15 of the packet. D number 1, make available to the public any proposed fee, charge or assessment. I think that would be probably a change, but make available to the public. And I wasn't sure whether this would apply to an individual, new project or water user or across the board. But I was thinking, well, if you're going to hit, someone with, an individual with an increase or across the board, you could make it available in the fine print of your webpage, but don't you have to notify someone that something's changed?
Yeah, there's
Somehow, that's my question on that word.
yeah, so this mimics the requirements in 218 in which we have to send a notice 45 days to adopting a new fee. And that notice has to have in it the actual changes to the and you know, kind of
Okay, so this is part of the standard noticing,
yeah,
and it says make available that.
make available the information about what we're considering as we.
Yeah, cause I would, yeah, all right, cause I was thinking of if someone wants to, like the cable companies. If they want to increase your rates, they, oh, it's available, it was on our website. Well, I don't check your website every month of the year, you know? So, but that's understood, that's.
Yeah, we make direct mailings.
Right,
so it has
okay,
to be-
yeah, okay, I wasn't sure if this was about a particular new project or something like that, rate increase. Okay. Thank you.
Bob, we're talking 50% of all our customers, not the people present at a board meeting.
Yeah, so it's 50% of the ratepayers, yeah. So, and we go even more conservative in that we notify every landowner as well as every tenant, or, you know, so we'll count tenants even as a protest. So, so we have a, you know, a number, let's say we have, you know, 5,000 parcels. We count every protest, whether it's from a tenant or a landowner, and then we say, is it more than 4,500?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Very good. Thank you, Bob. Item number 9E, consider authorization to execute a license agreement with the Carpinteria and Summerlin Fire and Montecito Fire Districts for co-location of equipment at Shepherd Mesa Tank for action.
Yeah, so this is, this was again for information at the last board meeting. We've been working with Montecito and Carpinteria Summerlin Fire Districts on a licensing agreement to co-locate a new piece of radio equipment as well as a new antenna on the tank. See some photos of presentation here, left there with the red outline that shows where the micro, roughly where the microwave antenna would go. And then the yellow box, roughly where the piece of equipment would go. And in the photo, there's already an existing piece of fire district equipment there. That's different type of radio, simply inserted there. Those pieces of equipment were installed under a license that was approved in 2013, but since it's new equipment, we decided to just include, well, not, but have a new licensing agreement. Some of the things that we identified early in 2023 that we wanted to make sure were considered in this agreement, were we wanted to make sure the neighborhood knew what was going on. In the past, we've had questions whenever anything is done at that tank from the Discovered Mesa neighborhood. And so we did have a community meeting and we did some mailing outreach for that project. And so that was checked on our concern list. We also were concerned that we have an electric meter up there, and the only thing that the electric meter uses is a light bulb on the top of the tank. It's an aircraft warning light. And so the fact that they were installing all this electrical equipment, we thought maybe you should have the account in your name and pay the bill. So they agreed to that. The license agreement, which we're considering tonight, we worked with the fire district to get that to the point where we think it's ready. And then finally, verification of state interference. And so this is written into the agreement that we have to have our consultants look at everything that's proposed and verify that it's going to work prior to installation. Oops, that should be action. Should be the recommendation is to approve the license agreement.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Actually, I have a question. I do believe we addressed it when we had a discussion with the fire department. But if there's any litigation regarding the radio frequencies from the Shepherd Mesa people, they're gonna go after the fire department, are we?
Yeah, there's a whole harmless clause in the agreement. Council can speak to how it's handled, but essentially in the agreement, it says the fire district will hold harmless.
I have a question. Wasn't there a ladder there or something they were gonna do too?
In the agreement, they agreed to share the cost of that maintenance of the safety plan and the ladder.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I need a roll call, please.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Ball.
Second.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Randall.
Please.
Motion passes 5-0.
Then we got item number 9F, consider authorization to execute the CAP, ETA and ground lease for action, Bob.
Yeah, I have Chris Malvin from WSC online to talk about this. We did meet with the committee, and so we have a little bit of discussion on one of the items that was identified as something that we want to look into. So I'll let you take it from here, Chris, and just tell me when you want to advance.
Great, thanks, Bob. Good evening, directors. Can everyone hear me just fine?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're good.
Great, thank you. Okay, so as Bob noted here, I worked here to present for approval the JEPA and lease agreements. Let's go to the next slide. Just a quick agenda. We'll talk about just an overview of the agreements, changes that have been made since the last time these were presented to the board in September, and then next steps. So next slide. just as a quick overview and reminder, the way that the agreements have been set up between Carpinteria Valley Water District and Carpinteria Sanitary District are 3 agreements. These agreements were identified very early on in the process. The first is a lease agreement, which allows CAP to be built and operated on CSD property. The second is the JEPA. This is the main agreement, defines roles, responsibilities, ownership of the project, governance, setting up committees between the 2 agencies, and ultimately also financial responsibility. Finally, we have the operations agreement. This agreement is not yet ready. This will govern the operations and management of, and really get into the fine details of the operation of the facility. So include details around staffing, reporting, sampling, and monitoring. Some of this information is just not yet available, and there was reasons to get the lease and JEPA moving forward in order to comply with our now SRF agreement. It requires these 2 agreements to be executed. I think we'll meet our deadline, but it was a deadline that was established in that agreement. So there was reasons to bring these forward sooner. We've been working on these for a while, and so let's get into the changes since these last were presented to the board. So next slide. One of the main concerns that was raised in September was the term of the agreement. So we consulted with CSD legal counsel and also with the district's legal counsel, and agreed that we can extend that term from 30 years to 50 years. So there were kind of 2 locations where we identified it as being defined for the term. And so we've made those changes, and we're just reflecting that here on this slide. Let's go to the next slide. So one item that was brought up at the committee meeting on Monday was related to early termination. There was a minor correction that was made in reference to section 317, which is why that's highlighted there. But the principal concern was regarding early termination due to unanticipated mandate legislation that would require an expansion of the facility, the existing facility, and therefore perhaps require some of the land that the AWPF is currently occupying. So during development of the JEPA and lease, we've had discussed early termination. We, in consultation with CSD and ourselves, kind of came up with some early termination language that was set on a kind of a tiered payback, such that if the lease needed to be terminated within the first 5 years, for example, there was compensation that would be paid from the CSD to CVWD. But it really became very complicated to try and define what that looked like now. And so the language that is presented here before you is what we ultimately settled on. That was agreed upon both by CSD and district council, that sort of identified just that if early termination is required due to unavoidable circumstances related to CSD needing to expand the facility, that would be done on good faith. And then if that couldn't be reached, it would follow the dispute resolution process. We consulted with the CSD and district's own legal counsel regarding sort of changes here. Sort of were in the last 2 days, really were unable to come up with something in the short term. We did identify another avenue, and to manage that financial risk, the district can look into underwriting that risk through an insurance company. So that may be a path forward to proceed with this language as is, while still meeting the concern raised at the committee. Next slide. So finally here, recommendations and next steps, direct general manager to investigate and report back on underwriting and authorize board president to execute the JEPA and lease agreement. The JEPA and lease agreement is up for approval at CSD board on November 19th. And we'll continue to develop the operations agreement with the intent of adopting in spring. And with that, we'll open up to any questions.
And I will add, General Manager Craig Murray is on, if you have any questions for the sanitary district.
No, I think I'll just make a comment. So 21 was something that we talked about on Monday, early terminations. And on the last iteration that we saw, we did have some language where, you know, the first 5 years we get back X%, and the next 5 years we get back some X%. And I mean, how I see 21 is basically if there's some regulation that comes up in the future where that they could say that that land is required, then we're kind of stuck holding the bag for the entire project. That could happen. You know, it's unlikely, but it could happen in year 1, it could happen in year 50. It's a long time to have kind of not a lot of teeth to get any kind of financial recuperation if something happens. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a major change from what we've seen last time, and so that's why we talked about it. And you know, we did talk about it at the community level a bit. It's an interpretation of what if some regulation were to come along and CSD requires an additional footprint to install additional facilities to process either more volumes or more precisely, more thoroughly process anything. It says unavoidably require, and that word unavoidably is a big word. And there's a lot of ways you can avoid having to require taking out a $50 million facility because you want to, you acquire adjacent property, and there's all sorts of things that seem like it would be improbable, but underwriting that risk might be an answer that might help.
So I guess I just wasn't sure. I had the same question myself when the way that the term 21 was explained, it seemed like we're not quite there yet. It seemed like we were looking for some other things, and maybe the insurance underwriting would be the way to go. But then, is that going to be modified somewhere in the agreement, or we're supposed, or we have
Well,
to,
so
we're approving the agreement tonight, right? Or
that's the proposed.
Okay. But it seems like this isn't 21 isn't quite.
Yeah, so
the way we want it.
I think, and Craig Murray, you can correct me, but I think where we're at is the sand district's is not interested in taking on financial risk. You know, in the event that this happens, you know, and they're forced to encroach on the EWPF. The likelihood of that's pretty low. You know, there are a lot of things that could be done to meet regulatory requirements without expanding, you know, the existing facilities. So since the CSC doesn't have an appetite for taking on that risk, and we don't want to take on that risk, really the only way to resolve that is by underwriting it and paying the insurance company to take on that risk. So that's the direction we're proposing to go. It doesn't need to be in the agreement. It's just an action that we would take to cover our risks. So
what are the next steps in doing that?
so I reached out to our JPI. I have not heard from them, but I suspect that they're going to say we don't contractual risk we don't cover. You'd have to go to some sort of specialized insurance carrier, insurance company to see what they would have to do to analyze that.
So despite having that action out there kind of dangling, we're comfortable enough with this language as it is in term 21.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if we go forward and we determine you know, that the risk, you know, to cover the risk is prohibitive, for example. Then we have to make the decision: do we want to try to reopen this agreement and modify this, or just live with the risk, because there really aren't a lot of options. We either live with the risk, we farm it out to an insurance company, or we try to negotiate this with the sand district on sharing the risk. And at least initially, my understanding is the CSD's not really that interested in sharing risk like that.
Matthew had mentioned in our committee meeting about the capacities, the current demand on the CFD facility and what the capacity of the plant was. There's a lot of unused capacity still there.
So the current inflow is around 1 mg, and it's a 2.5 mg plant. So there's excess capacity there.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, thank you for clarifying the risk, because I didn't understand it. Yeah, it was originally built to be a recycling or sanitary along with Montecito, so they already have more land. There's also more vacant land there, and yeah, we want to do this joint venture for the good of the community, and we have this extra land, and we're gonna sign a lease, and yeah, but we don't want this risk. It seems like some government agency would shut down your sanitary district or something, because of the thing, but it's good you're thinking about it, I guess. And the question I had was, because before when we started this off, and I read the preview, but I didn't read the whole agreement. Is there anything in the agreement that reimburses the water district any monies if the sanitary, here another, it's an issue involving outside regulation. If the sanitary district is required to fully treat their water or not, they're no longer allowed to, dispose of it into the ocean. They're kind of making noises about that. And so here we are already paying for this process that they don't get a benefit of, so, and we were talking about getting some kind of a.
Yeah, early on in the discussion, we talked about avoided costs. So in other words, if
Avoided costs.
a regulation comes along, it requires them to reduce their discharge flow to the ocean, and we've already done that. We would want to go back and.
Is that in the agreement?
It's in the agreement, in that we would reopen the agreement and negotiate the cost that they avoided.
Oh, okay, and my second question is, how much is the rent a month? How much?
It's 0. No charge.
Well,
I
the
didn't
agreement
see
said you
that.
pay $1 a year.
Well, it should be at least $1, otherwise.
Is it $1 a year?
And then there's penalties if we
I
fail
think
to
it
pay.
just says,
So it's paid all up front.
okay, a reasonable, it's not much, I can tell you that. It's not an amount that's.
I could be mistaken. I thought I saw it was $1, but then it was also funny because there was some penalties if we failed to pay. Which should be like standard lease.
Well,
Language.
penalties,
What they gave us lowest.
yeah, the penalties are for non-payment are having to do with the operation
That's
costs. Yeah. Not even
This is no rent is payable.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, it does say
I
0.
didn't see that.
Oh,
Okay.
section 7. Isn't there a clause that says we fail to pay 0, then we? Like, when I was thinking about the lease, I was looking at, maybe that was it.
Yeah, that, again, the failure to pay is referring to the operation cost.
Failing to operate. Okay, no worries.
Well, that was my only question, so thank you for, it sounds like we've got next steps, but we're not in any, it's not a risk to have the language as is in there.
I mean, there's a risk. It's just a question of how do we deal with that risk.
Right, but I just, what I meant is, in the beginning, I thought, well, it doesn't sound like we're comfortable with this phrase, so why are we even doing this tonight? But it sounds like the next steps that you're taking are to minimize
Yeah.
the exposure to this.
In our view, the only, we actually mitigate this risk is by seeing if we can find insurance.
Right.
For underwriting.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but since what's being done there is for the good of the community, this eminent domain give us an option to get more space if that's what needed? And would it be the did? the water district or sanitation district that goes out there and
Eminent domain of what?
To
What
take-
property?
take over any neighbors that, well, I won't say are in the way or needed.
I mean, I suppose you could go to that route, but my understanding is there's a surplus of property available regardless, right?
Right,
On
no, there is,
CSA.
I'm just saying, is we can look at,
I don't, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a step you really don't ever go. Anything
no, no.
Worst comes to worst, I suppose at some point that could be available, but in the next 50 years, that's unlikely. Right, 'cause the term for both of these agreements is 50 years. So. My understanding is there's enough land to fulfill district's needs.
Well, no, I believe that too, but I'm just saying if it's an option, if the insurance premium becomes excessive, then.
Yeah, that's the big question in the room is what insurance company is gonna want to cover that risk. I feel this risk is remote. And I think it's in the category of highly unlikely that we'd ever encounter this. And again, unavoidable does mean that you would exhaust all your other options first, which might include voluntary, say, there might be a voluntary adjacent neighbor that wants to sell. Or a cooperative government agency, state park owns adjacent property that might be cooperative. But I'm just making all this up. The point being is I think there's a lot of effort that would be made before the decision to shut down the advanced purification project would occur and starve the community of potable water. And that would be a very, very heavy choice.
The city actually owns a property adjacent that is an old right of way that could be used.
I'm just saying, so unavoidable means you really have exhausted all other options before you came to this. Which would be somewhat cataclysmic, but I think it's very unlikely.
Well, it sounds like you had the discussion, you're comfortable to move forward. I
Yeah.
think we all are.
That's not good.
It sounds like there's options down the line. We'll just have to pick the cheapest one, that's all.
Can you refresh my memory why we didn't do an easement? Or try to do an easement?
They weren't interested in the easement, they wanted.
So I guess just my final thoughts on it are the chances are remote, yes, but not so remote that CST doesn't want the language in there and is refusing to share the risk. It's remote, but it exists.
It's calculated, because you'll be the only one around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope. Let's hope. It happens next year, but I don't know.
So then we need a motion.
All right, I'll move. To authorize execution of the, we're just doing, you want all three, just to do that?
No, just the two, JEPA and we.
So the Jeff Ennis, okay, thank you.
Probably second.
Okay, we got a motion and second, is that on item F and G then, or, no, sorry, just
Just
F,
F.
F only, sorry. Okay, we got a motion and second, any more discussion? And a roll call, please.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Galt.
They.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Van Wingeren.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Then we go to item number 9G, consider approval of the CAP EIR addendum for action, Bob.
Yeah, again, Chris will talk about this, so we, as you know, 2019 approved an EIR and for the CAP project, and now since then gone through a final design, so now we're back here with some amendments to that EIR, so Chris, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Bob. Let's go to the next slide. So yeah, as Bob noted, so this project was, or here's the agenda, talk a little bit about the background, and then we'll get directly into the changes with some illustrations to help show what we have done since the 2019 EIR and the changes that are in this addendum. So next slide. So the original CAP EIR was adopted in 2019. Since then, there have been changes to the design. Any changes that are made to an approved project that require modification, or that will require modification to the EIR. Changes that do not meet criteria required for a subsequent or supplemental EAR can be moved forward by addendum. And just to clarify that a little bit, so a subsequent or supplemental EIR are two other documents that amend an EIR along with the addendum that we're moving forward with here. But those are much more intensive. They require public review, whereas an EIR addendum does not. So an EIR addendum is set forth to make minor changes. It's a mechanism to make minor changes to an EIR as long as there are no new significant environmental effects or substantial increase in the severity of previously identified effects. And this language here is taken directly from CEQA guidance. So getting into the changes real quick, it's a bit of a mix of changes, both to designed and intended locations. And in some cases, we're adding alternate locations. So in the case of the Linden injection well, we are not modifying the proposed and designed location for the injection well, but as a part of this EIR addendum, we are adding an alternate to locate that well in public right-of-way on Linden. So should, for example, negotiations with the St. Joseph's Church break down and we can no longer acquire the property through an easement, then we've already gone ahead to add the alternative location in the public right-of-way so that we wouldn't have to process another EII document in the future. So this is really just a backup. Next slide. Another sort of similar case here, monitoring wells were proposed in the EIR to be located in Memorial Park. We're currently moving forward with locating those monitoring wells in Memorial Park. Our CDP CUP application showed them there as well. But again, in the event that there's a reason that we can no longer move forward with those monitoring wells in Memorial Park, we've included an alternative location to locate those monitoring wells sort of in the driveway lane at headquarters. So just adding an alternate. Next slide. So the changes here to the Meadowview injection well and monitoring well, these are actual proposed changes to what was the previous sites. So in the case of the injection well, the plan was to install that well on the LDS Church site. They kind of have a back lot there that's really not being used. The intent was sort of to tuck that well back there along with a backwash tank. But indications from LDS Church was that they were not going to sell or provide an easement. So we needed to find an alternative location. So through discussions with the city, we are intending to locate that injection well in public right-of-way in Meadowview Lane. Similarly, we were intending to install monitoring well cluster in Franklin Park, but Franklin Park, the size of the oak trees have grown quite a bit since 2019, which makes it difficult to locate the monitoring wells in the park. Furthermore, groundwater modeling suggested that the Franklin Park monitoring wells may have been too far away from our now new proposed Meadowview site. So there's a requirement for travel time in the regulations that stipulates that no less than 2 weeks or no more than 6 months of travel time is required between the injection well and monitoring well. This is the groundwater or the injected purified water in the ground. And the modeling suggested that from the proposed Meadowview injection well site here in blue to what would have been Franklin Park monitoring wells could have been greater than 6 months of travel time. So for that reason, we're intending to locate the monitoring wells here at the end of Meadowview Lane as shown. There are additional benefits here beyond just not having to impact the oak trees in Franklin Park. By kind of co-locating the Meadowview monitoring well cluster and the injection well, we can use a single contractor, mobilization, and a sound wall. All will sort of benefit the community impact from the drilling operations. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. So originally in the IR, were contemplated a above ground backwash storage tank. So this would have been, a steel water storage tank, originally again located at the LDS Church, and or at the Lindenwell site on the St. Joseph's Church. Neither of which is great from a visual perspective. So we were really looking for an alternative way to convey the backwash storage. So just as a quick note here, periodically those injection wells do need to kind of reverse the flow to help clean the screens. So rather than inject the purified water into the ground, we're now going to pump that water out of the ground, sort of reverse the flow and help clean the screens. But the rate at which we do that is much greater than what the CSD's collection system can handle. So we do need some amount of storage to help regulate the flow to the collection system. So what we've devised is the installation of a large diameter pipeline here in Meadowview. So that will carry enough storage capacity to sort of slowly meter that water at an acceptable flow rate into the collection system. We also did look at discharging that into Franklin Creek, but there were couldn't do that due to water quality issues of the backwash water. This also has the added benefit of not, therefore, getting rid of that water. So we're recycling that water, so that then will go to the collection system, which will then be treated, and then back into the AWPF. Next slide. There were also some minor changes at the AWPF site itself, increasing the building height from 20 feet to 30 feet, which is similar in height to the existing CSD facility and under the city regulations for building height. The process area increased in square footage from the IR from about 9,000 to 12,000. We had an above grade equalization tank. So this is the tank that receives water, the secondary effluent from the treatment plant, and equalizes that flow to the AWPF. So in other words, as the diurnal flow pattern or the variation in flow leaving the CSD facility, we'll use this equalization tank to help maintain a steady stream to the AWPF, which is important for treatment. So that was an above ground steel tank, and now it will be a completely buried tank. The benefit there is both preservation of space. So that buried tank is flush to the ground and will allow, for work to occur on top of it. Also, when we had an above ground tank, it required effectively double pumping. So we were pumping out of or from the secondary into that tank, and then we would again be pumping out of that tank to the AWPF. With the below grade tank, that now will still maintain its flow of gravity from the CSD's facility into the equalization tank, and we're only pumping out once. So there's a long-term operational savings by including that concrete tank. Other minor change here, just changing the treatment capacity from 1.2 to 1.3. Again, that's just to capture more peak flow. It doesn't change the overall output of the facility that significantly. And then changing the foundation design from driven or drilled piles to a deep soil mixing. And those are the changes to AWPF. Everything else is really remains the same from the EIR. And again, because of all of these changes don't necessitate any additional environmental impacts or doesn't change the severity of those environmental impacts, we're allowed to move forward with an EIR addendum, which only requires board approval to certify as an environmental CEQA document. So with that, if there are any questions, we'll. Yes. Sure.
I can understand that the EIR addendum and as we have hit that, so many times on different projects, but I was just wondering the changes that were reviewed in terms of the design, and how has that impacted what we reviewed a month or two ago, the cost? So like the tank that's gonna.
Yeah,
go,
those are all included.
that was already baked in,
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
We covered this in our community last.
Right, I figured. Okay, if there's no other questions, can we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the CAP EIR addendum.
We got a motion in a second. Any more discussion? Maybe roll call, please.
Director Roberts,
Aye.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Bulge,
Right.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Raymond.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And then we move on to director reports on number 10. So the 10A has already been covered, both Matt and Casey. So
Yes.
then we got, don't let you want to add something to this? I think so. And then we got the 10B, Shirley, your last CVWD.
Okay, yeah, I would like to focus mostly on the first item of the CVWA meeting, which was a special report from one of the state water contractors, experts to report, is Dr. Chandra, and his report was entitled An Overview to the State Water Project Supply Issues. So, just and he went into more of a background, but you all know most of this, but I'll just say briefly, as you know, the state water project, is, well, 700 miles long. And the idea with the state water project and also the federal project was done in the 50s. The state water project was done in the 60s, and our portion of it was done 90s, yeah. So anyway, so the general idea and the design of it is California, the land of sunshine and promise. And the idea is to transfer water from Northern California, where most of the water lands, to Central California at first, the ag use, which is mostly the federal system, and also Southern California for urban use, which is the state more, where more of the water is needed. And it started out simple enough, the concept, and the state water deliveries were at 100% allocation year after year. That means if you signed up for so many thousand acre feet a year, if you needed it, you ordered it, and you got 100% of what you ordered of your allocation. But then due to changes in climate and plunging fish populations, which was kind of a surprise, I think, the delivery on allocations was adjusted downward. The average delivered went from 100% to 60%. Now I think it's at 50%. They're predicting it may go down to 40%, and this is due to pressures of the climate changing, and also the other main driver is fish, the water quality. So briefly, there are two major pumping stations which move the water from the north to the south. The 1950s Federal Jones Pumping Station with a capacity of 4,200 cubic feet per second. And then the more modern state project, the Banks Pumping Station, and they're located pretty close to each other. Which is 10,350 feet per second capacity. And, which I guess I knew it, but I didn't realize that the state pumping stations have twice the capacity as the federal. And the federal, Lake Shasta is twice the capacity of half of Lake Oroville, which is the storage facility of the state, so kind of got, and I don't know if they ever fire them up these days to full capacity. Who knows, if they went all together, they probably put the whole state of California, into a blackout. They overuse the electricity, and maybe they could reverse the Mississippi River. I don't know, but anyway. So he was going on this. So the main question of this presentation is, so what has changed since the 60s? To now, that's kind of the whole concept has gone through some iterations of this whole system and how it should be used. Climate is changing, new weather prediction technology is being deployed, brand new concept, atmospheric rivers. I mean, they didn't even talk about those before, and a better understanding of how they work and how we can predict them. The major point of that is we can't. El Nino and La Nina will sometimes set up a probability that the atmospheric rivers will form off the coast, but we don't know where they're gonna touch down or where they're gonna go or how big they'll be. And the latest predictions I heard was that it looks like they're heading further north. So he went through a history of the BIOPS, which is biological opinions were formulated. And each time they come up with a new biop, they change their management strategy of these massive, pumps and all this water. And we've seen sudden drops in certain fish populations. So, Dr. Chandra did a simple chart of two circles, like with an eyeball. And these are all the targets that they have to meet in order to decide how much of the allocation they're going to pump from, the north and the snow melt and all considerations to the south. And the state has 4 different targets they have to meet, and the federal has 3, and their biological opinions. They list each opinion and Delta water quality control, and etc. So these are all considerations, and okay. So the speaker is whizzing through all these regulations and pieces moving and how the thing is working. So we've learned that it's shutting down, it's throttling down, which leaves me as a citizen, a person on a water district, really wanting to insulate my water district and have our own, our own groundwater and our own supply, and not have to be, dependent on this. And at the same time, we're very much dependent. We're all part of the same system, especially with the changes in the laws and the arteries of water moving all over the district, and big users like LA Metro and the big ag people. So and so another major point of the cutbacks of the quality is the prime pumping time to move water from the north to the south has decreased from 5 to 6 months out of the year to maybe 3 to 4 months out of the year. It's got to increase, and the change of the state project as being our source of water, abundant water from the north, has been changed to it's a drought response. We have to take the water when it's flooding out of the mountains and store it, do something with it. So the prime pumping time is also reduced because when the water is flowing down in great quantities, that's also when the fish are migrating down. And the fish are migrating across the delta, and you've got these huge pumping banks, and we got abundant water, let's take it while we can. And what are you doing? You're sucking in all these little baby fish, baby salmon, you're, you know, chewing up the next generation of salmon. Yeah, so they monitor that and they shut down, then they throttle back those pumps when this starts to happen. So so this is also constricting the times we can use this. And another obstacle is the holding tank, Lake Oroville, the state holding tank, we can only use about half its capacity because of flood control considerations and senior water rights. And they don't really, and fish needs. So they didn't really break out those acre feet. So I did ask, I'll get to that later. So he mentioned that the state was moving toward recommending of storing more water in underground as opposed to on the surface. And so I asked if the state is weighing in on whether these underground water bank projects should be publicly owned, you know, by the taxpayer, or should they be private for profit operations with international investors or whatever, or public-private installations. And he said they hadn't gotten that far in their deliberations on what these underground water banks should be, but that we need more of them. So the latest biops, he said, are all driven by fish, biological opinions. He said the state water project has lost about 1 million acre feet per year exports due to the biological opinions. And so we moved on to, he discussed the new possible development of the Delta conveyance. You've all heard of that, the twin tunnels, you know, what they're trying to do is to take water from the upper Sacramento River and these huge pipelines under the Delta, about 40 miles long, to deliver it to these pumping stations. So you're not pumping as much Delta water, it's coming through these pipes. But anyway, so one of the new proposals that was actually made by our presenter is to deliver the water not to the forebay of the bank's pumping station, which you're involving all the fish and everything with that, and they're getting sucked into the you know, the pumps, even though they have any kind of devices they can manage to try to prevent that, to deliver it past that point. And he said that would cut the suckage of fish, which I don't mean suckage of fish by number of fish sucked. I mean the current pressure. It could reduce it by 40%. And this is the first time I ever heard this. I was like gobsmacked. Wow, maybe this is brilliant, you know. So you know, so one could run the bank's pumps at a lower rate and still move more water south when it is available during the snow melt and rainy season without increasing that current across the Feather River watershed and taking in you know, all those fish. So, and the second thing was, it is quoted that the Oroville deliveries are limited by biops and senior water rights issues. In other words, the Oroville reservoir, they want it to be at half full by the start of the rainy season. Okay, so you got all this water and you have to drain it down to half full and send it to the ocean because it's a flood. It's a flood. It's a flood response, and also a lot of the water in that Oroville we can't touch because it's something called senior water rights. So regarding the let's see, okay, all right, I'm gonna explain it. Senior water rights is a water law that dates prior to 1914. So if you happen to have water rights prior to 1914, you are a senior water right holder, and you don't get cut back. You don't have to respond to droughts. You get your water first. And so they can't touch all this water in Lake Oroville. And I always wondered, well, how much water is that? And probably not hardly anybody could answer that. But this gentleman, Ray, said he knows more than anything, and if he has any technical questions, he asks him. And that would be about 4 million acre feet per year. Okay, we mentioned that the fish is 1 million acre feet, and the senior water rights is 4 million acre feet a year, which, wow, well, maybe we ought to look at this 1914 legal setup, and I hope everyone is curious to look into it, including legal counsel, and you know, not that it's gonna affect us, but it's gonna affect everybody because we're all connected. So that was really interesting, and it's not just the state system too. I have no idea what senior rights water, how it affects the federal system. So anyway, it was very, very interesting, and this is my layman's outline of the presentation. And you can see it's quite complicated, very fascinating, very important and critical. And I just have, you know, kudos to the career specialists on the ground. And the more you really look into it, maybe the less political sound bites you're gonna react to. You know, because all these bullseye, complicated, things they consider, and they're really doing the best they can to solve these problems. And also kudos to Ray for bringing this expertise to the Central Coast Water Authority Board, which he's done before with the water contractors. So that's my report. I've learned two big things from this report.
Thank you. So we just lost 5 million acre feet of water.
The senior water rights, I had no idea. 400.
Well, I know some of the people that have those senior water rights, and they're not gonna get them up. Those are old time.
1914,
I know,
only in California.
I understand.
Yeah.
All right, any questions for Thursday? Then we move on to item number 11, general management report, none. And then we have consider dates and items for the agenda for the Carpinteria Valley Water District Board meeting of December 11, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Carpinteria City Hall. By the way, Jane will address your comment that you made earlier about the concern of building.
Yeah.
Where the water coming from the houses where you need to build. What's about to put in the future agenda. So it's.
Yeah, it'd be great to have a forum where you just have some information that people can understand, but and not on this level, make it much simpler. Water is wet.
All right, everyone. Meeting adjourned.